Hello there. This is the Critical Thinking with the Erudite Pragmatist. It's a catchy title, I thought. I'm going to do a movie review on Spike Lee's Da Five Bloods. I don't care much for the title, but it is what it is. Um, Let me get right to the point. This movie was a big swing and a miss. It was awful, terrible. I could go on and on with synonyms for how bad it was. It was just the worst. To start with, it was 2 hours and 35 minutes long, and you would do well if you do start watching to end after the first 5 minutes. He does a montage set to Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues, which I love. It's one of my favorite songs. I grew up with Marvin Gaye's music. Love it. He is the best. But I think putting this song and clips of Martin Luther King in this movie is not an homage, it's a disgrace. Those two revered characters do not need to be associated with this movie, and I'm really disappointed. They've been hijacked. It's just that bad. So let me go through some of the things that you may be interested. The dialogue was non-existent to me. It was just out of place. It was just ineffective, misguided. And then the most important point, it was chock full of the requisite F word, which seems to occur in Spike Lee's movies so much. It's almost a hallmark. And not only F word, but gratuitous F words. They didn't belong. It was unnecessary and repetitive. It is just that bad. To me, this is a sign of a failed director to not look for or insist on meaningful dialogue. If you go to a director like David Lean, let me look at some of David Lean's movies. Lawrence of Arabia, one of probably my favorite movie of all time. Dr. Zhivago, Bridge on the River Kwai, which was a great movie, or A Passage to India. I venture to say there's not an F word in any one of those movies. You look at Spielberg. I can't imagine him putting in the F word. So why does it belong in Spike Lee's movie? Maybe because this is the type of person he is. I'm not going to go off on a rant on Spike Lee. Suffice it to say, I just don't like the guy. And he is a guy. He's not a man. He's a 63 or 60. He just told Anderson Cooper the other day his age. He's a adolescent. He's never grown up. He spends his time going to Knicks games. I may at some point do a whole video on why he doesn't use his money to do something meaningful. If his true cause really is black people's lives, if this really matters to him, why doesn't he spend his money and do something meaningful to help? Why does he spend all his time at the Knicks game and then insist on coming in a special entrance like he's some person of importance to the Knicks, which he's not. This is an aside, but it bothers me, to be honest. So I don't understand why the movie is full of F-bombs. It's just unnecessary, certainly not effective. As an aside, I did watch David Chappelle's video that he just posted yesterday, 8:46, about George Floyd. It also was loaded with F-bombs, and once again, unnecessary. But that's an aside. I don't want to go into it, but it's just, I don't understand the need for it, to be honest. So if you're asking what was the problem with the movie, here are some things that I jotted down. At one point, a snake jumps out of a tree. I couldn't imagine anything more ridiculous than this happening. I've been to Vietnam and I've seen snakes, and this doesn't happen. Okay, So I just think this is one example that stood out to me as nonsensical, illogical. But I guess he thought we have to get the character hurt, and this is what he came up with. But as I say, the byline might be swing and a miss. On all these little instances in the movie, it was just not, I won't say not possible, but it's just like lightning strike. It didn't belong in the movie. Then as you take as a whole, 4 very elderly black men going or venturing to a foreign country to commit a major felon, really? And then not only that, but then during the movie committing more felons. I mean, it was just, the premise is just not logical. So along the way, these 4 men show their true colors, right? They get into a bit of a bind, you might say, or an area where they need help. And again, out of the blue, 3 white people come along. And what's their first instinct? To threaten them, to pull a gun on them. As it turns out, they need their help. So they enlist the 3 people to help them, which they do. And then how are they repaid? By threatening to be killed. Throughout the whole movie, I just kept shaking my head. Who is writing this scenario? It was just ridiculous. They had half a dozen flashbacks. These also were ridiculous. I'm not going to go into them. If you're interested, you can watch them. I just found them odd would be nice. To say they were odd would be to be nice about it. The one redeeming character to me in the movie was Tien, one of the girlfriends of one of the characters. And during the movie, her daughter comes into the apartment. And I just thought, it might be a nebulous point, but I just thought the main black character couldn't even stand up and greet her like any normal person would do to someone of importance to the person you're with. Comes in, you can't even stand up. But the movie goes on, makes a big deal about him thinking. It went on ad nauseum, close to 3 or 4 minutes. And you can get it. I mean, you could have gotten it right away that he was thinking, is this woman my daughter, right? You didn't need to take 3 minutes for him to think and think. Anybody would have thought immediately, looking at the girl's skin color, wow, I wonder if that's my daughter, which was a normal thing to happen in Vietnam at that time. Happened to a lot of people. You didn't need 4 minutes for him to think it through. And to me, it would have been nicer if the character had stood up immediately and greeted somebody with some class. But it didn't happen. What was it in my notes? And the other thing is, let me just finish up with saying, well, I was going to put in something, but maybe I'll just leave it out. So in summary, I just think this movie would be a waste of anyone's time. It was certainly a waste of my time. I'd like to have 2.5 hours back that I wasted watching this terrible movie. The one redeeming thing is it might be a candidate for a Razzie, which is for terrible movies. Anyways, do yourself a favor and avoid this movie. It was that bad. Okay, so I hope you go and subscribe to my podcast and my YouTube, Critical Thinking with the Erudite Pragmatist. Okay, bye-bye.